Good morning, my dear students. In this video, I would like to discuss the chapter Biodiversity. This is the first chapter from the second module of the text, Nature Matters, Readings on Life and Nature. We can divide this chapter into three for the sake of discussion. In the first part, the topic biodiversity is introduced. Here also we get the definition of the term. Three different types of biodiversity is discussed here, and also the evolution and genesis of biodiversity. In part 2, we get an idea about the biogeographic classification of India. In the last part, value of biodiversity is discussed. Now take a look at the first part. The chapter begins by talking about the great variety of life on the earth that has provided man's needs for over thousands of years. We find that there are innumerable plants and other species on this earth. They have provided a support system for the human beings. When you analyze civilizations, we can find that each civilization has used this for its growth and development. Civilization that use this bounty of nature, this gift of nature, carefully and sustainably has survived. And those that overused or misused it disintegrated. So when you analyze the history of civilization, we can find that those civilizations that use the variety of nature or the life on the earth, what we are going to discuss as biodiversity in its proper way, existed or survived. Those who misused disintegrated. Now, there are attempts made by science to study about the different plants and other animals that we find on the earth. Science attempted to classify and categorize the variability in nature. It helped in understanding communities of plants and animals. The attempts from the part of science helped in utilizing biological wealth for the benefit of humanity. It also helped the development of healthcare, industrial growth, and in that way improved our standard of living. So we find that there are attempts from the part of science to classify and categorize different plants and other animals that we find in our nature. And these efforts helped us to improve various walks of life, including fields such as healthcare, industrial growth also improved as a result of these categorization. We are able to produce high yielding seeds. We are able to create a lot of plant species that are used for the development of agricultural industries, agricultural fields. So we find that the efforts made in the field of science helped us to improve our standard of life. At the same time, we should also understand that this has got some negative impacts also. What are those negative impacts? It produced a modern consumerist society. We have started using the resources available to us in all possible manners. It started to have some negative effect on the diversity of biological resources. How can we prevent negative impacts of our diversity in order to protect our diversity of our environment? we have to use them in a sustainable manner, in such a way that it should be preserved for the posterity. I mean, the future generation, posterity. We can use it for many generations if we use it wisely. We should be able to manage biodiversity as a precious resource. Now, take a look at the definition of biodiversity. Biological diversity or biodiversity is that part of nature which includes the differences in genes among the individual of a species, the variety and richness of all the plant and animal species at different scales in space, locally, in a region, in the country, and the world, and various types of ecosystems, both terrestrial and aquatic, within a defined area. We will discuss this definition in detail. Look at this. What is biodiversity? It deals with the degree of nature's variety in the biosphere. This can be observed at three levels. One is genetic variability within a species. Number two, the variety of species within a community. Number three, ecosystem diversity. That means organization of species in an area into the distinctive plant and animal communities. So we need to analyze biodiversity based on these three categories. First of all, genetic diversity. What do you mean by that? It means the differences in each member of any animal or plants. When we analyze human beings, for example, we can find that in a family itself, you can find people with different characteristics. Even the children of same parents are different in their character, in their behavior, in their approach. It has something to do with the genetic variety that we find in one species. This genetic variability is essential for a healthy breeding population. We cannot or we should not try to erase this genetic variety that we find. That will affect what you call inbreeding, that will affect or result in inbreeding, and also it will result in species extinction. When you started to concentrate on certain animals or plants that are beneficial for you, what happens? That may slowly affects the growth of that particular plant or animal. And also it will create that species extinction. So we need to understand that there are genetic diversity within a species. Here comes another interesting term called gene pool. A gene pool is the total genetic diversity found within a population or a species. We have innumerable variety of characteristics within one species itself, and that is because of the gene pool available to us. And today we find that modern biotechnology manipulates genes for developing better types of medicines and variety of industrial products. And also we find that there are efforts in the field of biotechnology to produce particular species of hybriding, what do you call, plants. Sometimes there are animals created by using different types of cloning methods. So it will have its own positive and negative impacts. We are not going to discuss that, but we should understand that there is a concept called gene pool that allows us to have different characteristics within a species. Now, next topic is that of that comes under biodiversity is that of species diversity. What do you mean by species diversity? The number of species of plants and animals that are present in a region constitutes its species diversity. When you take, for example, a particular area, there are number of species present in that region. Or in a country, if you take a particular area, you can find there are number of plants, number of animals. We know that in certain region, certain plants will grow. There are certain animals we can find only in particular areas. So we talk about species diversity taking into account different regions or different places and the different species available in that particular area. This diversity is seen in both in natural ecosystems and agricultural ecosystems. We will elaborate on this topic of natural ecosystem and agricultural ecosystems. We find that here in both these different ecosystems we can find species diversity. Natural ecosystems have a greater species richness than the agricultural ecosystems such as plantations. Now take a look at another term called hotspots. What do you mean by that? Hotspots are areas that are rich in species diversity. India is among the world's 15 nations that are exceptionally rich in species diversity. At present, conservation scientists have identified 1.8 million species on the earth. So we have different species on a particular area. And when we talked about that, we mentioned two ecosystems, that are natural ecosystems and agricultural ecosystems. What do you mean by natural ecosystems? We have in natural ecosystems, we have relatively undisturbed by human activities. Such ecosystems are not much affected by human activities, or human intervention is limited in such ecosystems. Whereas on the agricultural ecosystems, we find that it is managed with a purpose, usually to produce crops or animal products. Now take a look at the second important aspect about natural ecosystem. That is, it is purely natural and their formations are not in any way influenced by human activity. We have examples such as forest, desert, mountains, rivers, lakes, etc. And the different ecosystems associated with that. These are all purely natural. That's why it has got much greater species richness. Whereas in the agricultural ecosystems, we have limited species diversity. And examples of agricultural ecosystems are plantations, farmlands, grazing pastures, etc. These are something that we create with the purpose of producing crops or animal products. Another important part that is also discussed here is evolution and the genesis of biodiversity. Origins of life on the earth some 3.5 billion years ago are obscure. Even today, we are not able to state with clarity what exactly happened or what resulted in the origin of life on this planet. There are number of theories that provide some insights on this. They say that probably life on the earth initiated as a product of organic reactions in the earth seeds or in muddy ooze or seeded from outer space. These are all assumptions that we find. We cannot categorically state the reasons for the existence of life on this earth. However, when life took hold on the planet, it began gradually to diversify. It is said that unicellular species gradually evolved into complex multicellular plants and animals. Evolution is related to the ability of organisms to adapt to changes in their environment. Changes in nature, such as climatic and atmospheric changes, repeated glaciations, continental drift, formation of geographical barriers, segregated different communities of plants, and gradually lead to the formation of new species over millions of years. These are some of the arguments that we find that talk about the evolution of species. Here, one important aspect that we have to consider, that is the role of modern man in species extinction. We have already mentioned some of the reasons that led to the mega extinction of some of the species from this planet. But at the same time, today we have to take into consideration another important aspect that results in the extinction of species, that is due to the activities of modern man. The diversity of life at all three organization levels, that is genetic, species, and ecosystems, is being modified by modern man. This causes great loss to future generation. Now take a look at the biogeographic classification of India. India's biogeographic zones. Number 1, the cold mountainous snow-covered trans-Himalayan region of Ladakh. Number 2, the Himalayan ranges and valleys of Kashmir, Himachal Pradesh, Uttarakhand, Assam, and other northeastern states. Number 3, the Terai, the lowland where the Himalayan rivers flow into the plains. Number 4, Gangetic and Brahmaputra plains. Number 5, the Thar Desert of Rajasthan. Number 6, the semi-arid grassland region of the Deccan Plateau, Gujarat, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, Karnataka, and Tamil Nadu. Number 7, the northeast states of India. Number 8, the western Ghats in Maharashtra, Karnataka, and Kerala. Number 9, the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. Number 10, the long western and eastern coastal belt with sandy beaches, forests, and mangroves. In the last part of this chapter, the value of biodiversity is also discussed. Environmental service from species and ecosystems are essential at global, regional, and local levels. There are various environmental services that we get, like production of oxygen, reducing carbon dioxide, maintaining the water cycle, protecting soil, etc. These are essential at global, regional, and local levels. Loss of biodiversity contributes to global climatic changes, greenhouse effect, and also we need to understand that biodiversity is essential for preserving ecological processes and the well-being and the long-term survival of mankind. Biodiversity also plays a major role in human development. So any developmental program should take into account the value of biodiversity. It is integral to improving the quality of human life.